Millionaire's desperate moment revealed how a cleaning hero solved a crisis in just 1 minute. Jake Thompson scrubbed the grand ballroom floor of Maplewood Manor, his thoughts swirling with the contrasting worlds he navigated daily. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above, bathing the room in a glow that served to magnify every inch of opulence, celebrating the wealthy elite of his town. He inhaled the air laden with scents of perfume and pretentiousness, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he'd never belonged to such a world, where fortunes lingered in the air like wisps of smoke. Just last week, he had emptied his pockets to pay for groceries, praying the car would make it through another week. His wife and 2 kids needed him. The gala was the highlight of the season, but as he pushed the mop across the floor, Jake felt invisible, just a mere servant in a show staged for society's most privileged. Swallowing down resentment was a routine he perfected. Every swipe of that mop, every wipe of the cloth was for his family's survival. Yet no matter how diligent he was, seated at the farthest edge of the room were the affluent, their laughter and echo mocking his struggles. That stung. As the evening unfolded, the laughter morphed into shrill screams when Victoria Harrington, the owner of the manor, stormed through the throng of guests, her face twisted in fury. The heirloom necklace, the very life of the party, had vanished without a trace. Jake's stomach dropped at the commotion. Onlookers whispering, snickering, and pointing fingers was enough to set his nerves on edge. And when she locked her gaze onto him, accusing him without uttering a single word, the world around him morphed into a nightmare. The words thief echoed in his mind like a death knell. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Returning home was a different torment. A mix of shame and the heaviness of betrayal lingered. How could she think that of him? His children gushed about their day over the dinner table, unabashed in their pride for their dad, the unassailable love from their innocent hearts a balm to his wound, yet amplifying the pain of being called a thief. That image haunted him, and as they laughed, he wrestled with an internal tempest. He wanted to shield them from the sordid truth, but dishonor felt like a noose tugging tighter with every beat of his heart. Had he betrayed them? The thought clawed at him. The weight of class barriers and expectations suffocated him as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling. What if he didn't find that necklace? What if this shame lingered on? The aching injustice sent him spiraling deeper into a pit of despair. Remembering the maintenance closet he had passed during the gala, an instinct flickered within him, but stood half-hearted against the storm of doubt battering his resolve. Could he really bring himself to investigate? Fear lanced through him. The thought of proving his innocence also meant confronting the facade of this all-encompassing wealth. As he stood, heartbeat hammering in his chest, he felt paralyzed between duty and desperate need. Clenching his fists, Jake realized he had to make a choice, to flee the darkness of accusation or step into its light, even if it threatened to consume him. His world hung in precarious balance, and with every moment that ticked by, the weight of reputation and honor loomed ever heavier, leaving him fraught with uncertainty. Would he discover the truth? Or would it unveil an even greater personal catastrophe? As he took a breath, one whispered word of resolution echoed in the solitude of his mind. Fear. The darkness awaited. Jake stood motionless for a moment, engulfed by a turmoil that raged within. The anger and humiliation collided, demanding action, yet tethering him to the past, whispering that he would never break free from the chains of class. But perhaps it was time to prove otherwise. He could no longer sit back while accusations clouded his morality. With a sudden decision coursing through him, he slipped into his working attire, his hands moving almost mechanically, as if his body was ahead of his mind. As he left the warmth of his home, the wintry air cut through the layers, sharpening his senses. He needed clarity, a game plan instead of fog-laden uncertainty. The memory of the maintenance closet clawed at him, refusing to let go. A peeling sign loomed ahead on the manor's exterior, directing him toward the utility wing, a place oft forgotten by the socialites within. Determined, he pushed open the door, only to find an overwhelming scent of cleaning supplies and disarray welcoming him inside. The flickering fluorescent light cast a harsh glow, illuminating his surroundings. A metallic cart sat in disarray alongside buckets and long-forgotten mops scattered carelessly. Yet it was not the materials that caught his trained eye but the faint glimmer beneath a flicker of dust. With each breath, he felt a surge of adrenaline pulse through him. This was not merely about cleaning. This was a chance to reclaim his integrity. Approaching cautiously, he bent down, brushing aside layers of grime. His heart raced, anticipation building with each swipe. An array of forgotten tools shouldn't have been his sole concern, but the instinct to seek any sign of the missing necklace ignited within him. As he shifted some old rags, he caught sight of a familiar sheen. Victory and dread danced hand in hand as he uncovered a delicate chain, sparkling like a beacon, entangled amidst the clutter. He held it gingerly, feeling both its weight and his responsibility. The image of Victoria's outraged face rushed back. How much was bound to that necklace? Not just wealth, but history, legacy, heartbreak, and despair. Each second, another reminder of the world he yearned to breach but feared. But what if this was a trap? A multitude of questions invaded his mind. If he returned it, would it assure his innocence? Or would it ignite a storm, unveiling deeper correlations with his class struggles? He weighed the possibilities like a seesaw, one side teeming with shame, the other with the hope of validation. Yet the forked path lay before him. Should he confront Victoria with proof or hide away and let the injustice unfold? With every ounce of gut-wrenching determination, he knew there was no turning back. Resting the necklace in his pocket, he steadied his breath, voice steady yet shaky in its conviction. It was time to face not only Victoria, but the repercussions of a world that judged him without ever knowing him. As he approached the ballroom, the echo of laughter dulled, replaced by murmurs reflecting his hesitance. All those affluent elites, rich and indifferent, despite the turmoil swirling around them. The moment had come to stand tall, facing each piercing gaze that might question his plight. With each step, self-doubt began to ebb, replaced by an understanding of his own strength, a recognition of what he could achieve against the odds piled against him. This was not only about a necklace, it was reclaiming respect, dignity, and possibly even a path to freedom from the weight of disparagement. But as he neared the grand entrance, the weight in his pocket reminded him of the risk involved. Would he have the strength to confront Victoria and vindicate himself? Or would his fears loom larger than his newfound resolve? The air grew thick with anticipation. Everything hung precariously, waiting for him to make his move. Jake's heart pounded like a war drum, each thump serving as a reminder of what he faced. The marble floor of the ballroom gleamed under the soft glow of chandeliers, a stark contrast to the uncleaned utility wing that had birthed his resolve. The laughter from the guests, a cacophony of entitlement, filled the void as he stepped forward, feeling painfully aware of how out of place he was among the opulence. He knew he possessed the necklace, his ticket to redemption and perhaps acceptance, though the cost of presenting it felt dizzying. In a world where status defined every interaction, he had always been just a shadow, never quite fitting in. But today, those shadows seemed lighter somehow, illuminated by his inner fire. As he moved into the ballroom, thoughts swirled in his mind. How could he ever approach Victoria? Would she see him as more than simply the help? With each deliberate step, he resolved to confront her with confidence. But lurking beneath the surface of his newfound courage was a fear he could not shake. Exposing the truth risked everything: his job, his dignity, even his relationship with the few who had treated him with respect. Scanning the room, Jake's gaze locked onto Victoria, standing tall, her presence commanding. Laughter surrounded her as if he could feel the warmth from her cocoon of privilege, almost tangible, yet utterly foreign. She shimmered in a fitted gown, her laughter spilling like silver upon the crowd, a stark reminder of the distance between their realities. But today he wasn't merely a worker. He was something more, A man armed with the truth, the undeniable truth that could shake her world. Yet, what if that truth only isolated him more? The delicate chain in his pocket felt heavier, like the weight of the very expectations he sought to break free from. With resolve he moved closer, taking slow, measured breaths to calm the storm within. Yet each breath revealed the tremor in his hands, the way his body betrayed him despite his mind's protestations. What would he say? A formal greeting? A declaration of his findings? Each option felt inadequate, scrambling his thoughts as he rehearsed potential dialogues. As he approached, her amusement faded, replaced with a flicker of recognition. She narrowed her eyes, suspicion brewing. "Jake," she said coolly, her voice steady and clipped. "Victoria," he began, the formal tone unexpected even to himself. In a moment he was flooded with memories. Her laughter during casual conversations, moments shared over cups of coffee, the fleeting sense that perhaps on some level she viewed him as more than just an employee. But that was fading quickly. If this encounter simmered into tension, "I need to speak with you about the necklace," he stated, surprising himself with the firmness that threaded through his voice. A ripple of disturbance coursed through the crowd. Whispers began to swirl, eyes snapping toward them as if he had thrown a glass into still water. In that instant, Jake felt the weight of judgment. But it also sparked something fierce inside him. A determination to cut through the murkiness of assumptions and biases. Now, during such a gathering? Victoria's voice was taut with disbelief, but her poise faltered for just the briefest moment. "Yes, now. It's urgent," he pressed, stepping forward, a surge of adrenaline fueling his next move. This wasn't just about the necklace, it was his moment to stake a claim, to step out from behind the veil of service and into the light of truth, regardless of the consequences. With each word, Jake felt the pulse of the room shift. Eyes widened, breaths were held. Would he finally reveal the truth and reclaim his place? Or would he once again retreat into obscurity, obscured by the very class barriers he sought to dismantle? Jake's heart raced as he prepared for the key moment. Just as he opened his mouth to unveil the necklace, a sudden commotion erupted at the opposite side of the ballroom, pulling every ounce of attention away from them. His resolve froze momentarily. What had just unfolded? The tension shifted again, but uncertainty lingered in the air. Would the chaos serve as an ally or an obstacle? The time had come to act. But now, foundations were shifting uncontrollably around him. Was this his chance to seize the moment or a dance with disaster? Jake's heart skipped a beat as he turned his attention to the source of the disturbance. A figure had collapsed near the far wall, causing a ripple of panic to surge through the crowd. Victoria's brows furrowed as she glanced past Jake, her concerned expression revealing a flicker of vulnerability that momentarily softened her posh exterior. The world around him shifted, transforming from a scenario dominated by status and expectation into one of human fragility. Jake's resolve flickered, but the adrenaline coursing through him propelled him forward. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about addressing a crisis, stepping into a role he'd felt ill-equipped for until moments ago. "Jake, do you have any idea what's happening?" Victoria's voice, edged with urgency, broke through his momentary distraction. For the first time, he saw her not only as someone of privilege, but as someone who genuinely cared. "Call for help," he urged her, snapping back to focused action while his mind raced. "I'll check on them." Without waiting for her response, he moved through the gathering crowd, his heart pounding from more than just the surge of anticipated confrontation. This was real, raw urgency, something far removed from his inner struggles about class and identity. The sight that greeted him was alarming. A middle-aged man lay on the ground, unresponsive, his face pale against the polished marble. A few guests had begun to huddle around, some whispering, others frozen in shock. Jake knelt beside the man and checked for a pulse, his mind going into a dark spiral of unease as the seconds ticked by. Panic clawed at him. What would he do if he had to perform CPR? He hadn't taken a class. He was just a cleaner. Yet he was also aware that this moment, despite its chaos, could become a defining point in his life. In his chest stirred a surge of determination, more potent than he had ever known. He had always longed to be seen, to step beyond the label of the help. Perhaps this was his opportunity, a chance to prove his worth against the tide of adversity. "Can someone bring some water?" he called out, his voice breaking through the noise, and he felt a surprise at his own authority. It was bizarre, this sense of command. Maybe it was the urgency of the situation, or perhaps a deeper realization within himself that he held value even in this moment. He felt a presence beside him, Victoria now kneeling, her phone in hand. "I'm calling an ambulance," she said breathlessly, her eyes flickering back and forth between Jake and the man sprawled on the floor. "Good. Keep talking to him," Jake urged, desperately trying to recall anything from his limited knowledge about first aid. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder and, seeing the fear etched into Victoria's features, spoke with a calm he didn't wholly feel. "Just focus on your breathing, okay? Help's on the way." Time slowed as they waited, and in those moments Jake assessed his surroundings. The murmurs surrounding them were not of disdain or judgment. Instead, he felt a shift toward concern igniting the air. Watching Victoria work spoke volumes. It was a reminder that they were all human, each with latent fears and strengths just beneath the surface. With the man still unresponsive, Jake felt an urgency surging through him. The necklace, the confrontation, the lines drawn between classes, everything paled in comparison to the instant need for action. When the ambulance finally arrived, he stood back, his chest swelling with unanticipated pride. He had stepped up when needed. The crowd began to dissipate, the thrill of life returning to its rhythm, leaving the trauma of the moment behind them. But for Jake, something profound had shifted. He felt awakened, almost reborn into a version of himself that could confront tensions in ways he had never considered possible. As he caught Victoria's eye, a flicker of respect passed between them, igniting a spark that had not existed before. They both understood this moment could reshape not just their lives, but also their perceptions of one another. "What just happened?" Victoria asked softly, the night revealing a vulnerability in her voice that contrasted starkly with the glamorous facade she usually kept. "We did what we could. Sometimes that's all you need to do," Jake said, his own realization dawning upon him. He could be more than just invisible at the edges of their world. The night had shifted irrevocably, leaving him on the precipice of further revelations about himself and the real implications of his relationship with Victoria. He could feel the stakes rising, a sense that a deeper confrontation, one of more personal and professional nature, was looming. Would this unforeseen heroism reshape his future in ways he hadn't even begun to imagine? Jake knew that the thread he had begun to weave with courage needed to be further explored. With heart racing, he realized the true test awaited him beyond the fallacy of class. It was time to confront not just society but his own fears as well. Jake stood a bit away from the lingering crowd, his breath still quickened from the surge of adrenaline. The scene had unfolded rapidly, but now, in its wake, clarity began to settle like dust in the air. He replayed the moments over and over in his mind. From his initial panic to the unexpected assertiveness he had just displayed, a new understanding of himself was blooming. The remnants of the evening echoed, a gallery of voices conversing around him, the sirens fading into the distance, and the whispers of shock slowly overlapping with reluctant laughter as normalcy returned. But for Jake, the experience felt deeply transformative. He hadn't just participated, he had taken charge. A flicker of realization burned bright within him, a whisper of his potential. Walking back toward where he had last seen Victoria, Jake combed through his thoughts. His identity as the cleaner had been shattered, if only for a moment. He had commanded a response in a crisis, and that gave him an unfamiliar yet comforting sense of purpose. Was this the turning point he had been searching for? As he approached her, he noticed she was still on the periphery, still wrestling with the scene they had just witnessed. Her brow was slightly furrowed, a stark contrast to the effortless elegance she typically exuded. "Why do you look so lost?" he asked, trying to infuse some lightness into the heavy atmosphere. Victoria turned to him, a hint of a smile appearing. "You were different back there. I didn't expect it. I mean, not from you." The unexpected compliment stung a little. There was something unsettling about being viewed through a new lens. but it also lit a fire of ambition in his belly. "I think I'm starting to discover that I can be more than just someone behind the scenes," he replied tentatively, still gauging her reaction. She looked at him more intently, as if searching for something hidden. "Maybe we all have the capacity for more than we realize, but what does that mean for you?" Jake pondered her question, the honest insight churning in his mind. What were the implications? In this moment of clarity, he realized that he needed to explore this newfound bravery beyond the confines of that evening. "Do you ever feel trapped?" he asked suddenly. "Like everyone expects you to stay in a box only doing what's written for you?" Her gaze sharpened, and he could see the walls she often built around herself start to crack. "Every day," she admitted softly. "But breaking out, it's terrifying. The consequences can be daunting." Jake nodded, feeling a strange kinship as he contemplated the weight of expectation pressing on both of them. Maybe they weren't too different after all. "Then maybe we should face our fears together," he suggested, surprising even himself with the boldness of his own words. Her eyes widened for a moment at the suggestion. "What do you mean?" "I mean, let's challenge ourselves. I'll help you see beyond your rigid expectations if you help me navigate my own." It wasn't just about personal growth. It felt like a partnership emerging out of necessity, a desire to carve out their identities beyond the imprints of class and status. A silence fell between them, thick yet electric. He couldn't help but wonder if this was what he had been craving, a genuine connection with someone who might understand. Finally, she smiled, a slow breaking of the ice that had surrounded their interactions for so long. "All right, let's do it," she said with a nod. "But what shall our first challenge be?" As he opened his mouth to respond, an urgent voice interrupted them from the fringes of the crowd, a call for help ripping through the calm that had settled in. "Jake! Victoria!" It was another guest, their urgency reflected in the frantic movements of their hands. "Another situation! Someone needs you!" Someone. Jake felt his heart race again, a flicker of excitement mingling with fear. As doors to new challenges flung wide open, he and Victoria exchanged a knowing look, recognizing the uncharted path stretching before them. Was he ready to seize this chance? Could he truly step into the unknown alongside her? The answer loomed like a shadow, filled with promise and danger alike. It was time to discover precisely what awaited them both in this dance of crises and confidences. Jake's pulse surged as he and Victoria followed the frantic figure through the dispersing crowd. The excitement coursing through him was swiftly overshadowed by the weight of responsibility. He had deflected a crisis earlier, but now he wondered, was that lightning about to strike twice? As they approached the source of the commotion, he noticed a small group gathered by a decorative fountain. A young boy was kneeling by the edge, his face pale, and under his breath, he was calling for help. Victoria instinctively moved ahead, her instincts kicking in. "Jake, stay back," she whispered, though just as quickly she turned to the group with confidence. "What happened?" "His mom! She's in the water!" a concerned onlooker shouted, pointing to the glistening depths where a shimmer of movement disturbed the surface. Without a second thought, Jake's past experience kicked in. The part of him that had learned to stay invisible, the part that cleaned up messes without stepping into the spotlight, felt a visceral pull to act. He had a choice: to step back and let the authorities handle it, or to lean into the moment, embracing the potential he had only just discovered. "Victoria," he called, breaking his own hesitation. "We need to act now." Her surprised gaze met his, but he could see understanding blooming. Before she could reply, he'd already moved, despite the voice in his head warning him of the risks. He could drown this potential under another wave of indecision, but he wouldn't. Slipping off his shoes, he approached the fountain's edge. The cold, wet tiles under his bare feet shocked him back to the moment. Peering into the water, Jake's heart raced. "What do I do?" he thought. Panic twisted, but beneath it lay determination. This was more than a chance to save someone. It was an opportunity to redefine who he was. "Jake!" Victoria's voice was urgent, pulling him from the depths of his thoughts. We need to make a plan. Right, he focused. I'll jump in. You keep talking to the boy. Make sure he stays calm. I can reach the mother. Gazing back at her, he could see the glint of admiration, perhaps even fear, in her eyes. Be careful. He nodded. With measured breaths, he squared his shoulders. This was it. The moment he could prove to himself that he was more than just an employee who kept to the sidelines. He wasn't going to falter. As he dove into the water, the world above faded, engulfed in a freezing murk that stripped away extraneous thoughts. Instinct kicked in. He propelled himself deeper, scanning for the woman. His body felt powerful in the chill, moving away from the weight of doubt and into the surge of adrenaline. Finally, his fingers grazed the fabric of something, strong limbs tangled in panic. He wrapped an arm around her, instinctively trying to pull her back toward the surface. Emotions surged as he pictured her son above, waiting, needing her. But just as they began ascending, doubt elbowed in. What if he couldn't do this? What if his own breathing faltered? Every ounce of fear bubbled up, threatening to choke him. Yet amid the worry, a thought flashed. This was his chance to prove his worth to himself, to Victoria. Bursting out of the water, he gasped for air. Clutching the woman tightly, he felt a surge of relief wash over him. He was doing it. They were both going to make it. Jake, I'm here! Victoria's voice reached him through the chaos. She extended her hands to help, guiding them both back toward the embankment. He turned to her, the realization crashing over him like the waves surrounding them. This was a new beginning for him. He was no longer just a cleaner. He was a participant, a hero of his own story. But as they reached safety and the crowd's anticipation thickened, Jake caught a glimpse of something else. An individual watching from the fringes, their expression unreadable, a shadow of doubt lingering in their gaze. Who were they? And why did they seem so familiar? The moment he thought he had begun to grasp his place in the world, an oncoming storm of questions loomed over him, threatening to unravel everything he had just achieved. The crowd erupted into a cacophony of applause and relief as Jake and the woman emerged from the water. The instinctive heroism he had just revealed tugged at something deep inside him, igniting a flame of self-worth he had long buried beneath layers of doubt and avoidance. But acceptance felt fleeting when he returned to the complimenting sun that illuminated the hero's facade. Amid the cheers, Jake's attention drifted back to the individual lingering at the edge of the throng. The stranger's eyes held a piercing quality that unsettled him, a recognition that flickered beneath the surface, yet remained maddeningly elusive. He felt exposed, stripped of the armor he had carefully built around himself over the years. Are you okay? Victoria's voice cut through his turbulent thoughts, her brow etched with concern. She stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. That was incredible. Are you sure you're all right? Did anything happen when you were under? Yeah, I'm fine, he replied, though he could feel the unease creeping into his voice. He nodded to Victoria, masking his breathless nerves with an unconvincing smile. Just a bit cold. Cold? You were submerged in a fountain. You're lucky to be alive, she teased lightly, but her eyes betrayed a deeper understanding of the personal transformation she'd just witnessed. Jake caught a glimpse of the boy still kneeling, his gaze glued to his mother. She was being led away for medical assistance, her body trembling yet alive. But more than that, Jake felt himself tethered to the pride blooming in the child's eyes. He had chosen to act, and perhaps in this very moment he had begun to redefine himself not just as a worker, but as a person of conviction. Yet the thought of the observer still gnawed at him, a piercing gaze that didn't celebrate but instead scrutinized, dissecting his actions like a scientist might study an unknown variable. He took a deep breath, casting a furtive glance in their direction, only to find they had vanished into the crowd. Jake? Victoria's gentle inquiry broke the mounting tension in his thoughts. You did more than clean up a mess today. What happened underwater? Her expression was earnest, urging him to confront whatever internal storm brewed within. He hesitated, grappling with the complexity of what he witnessed, not just in the fountain but within himself. I didn't just think about how to save her. I realized I wanted to be someone worth admiring. The honesty tremored through him, breaking barriers he had maintained for too long. Victoria's eyes softened and he could see the wheels turning in her mind. That's important, Jake. You deserve to become someone you admire. This could be a turning point for you. But what if I crumble? The apprehension thrummed beneath the surface. What if it was just a fluke, and when real pressure hits, I can't handle it? She took a step closer, the distance between them imbued with empathy. We don't know what we're capable of until we have to face it. You might surprise yourself just like you did today. The moment sunk into Jake's psyche. He had embraced adversity, faced down his fears, and he had emerged in a way he never envisaged, yet he couldn't shake the sense that more challenges loomed beyond the horizon. How could a single moment yield such transformative potential, yet simultaneously conjure deep-seated doubts? As the crowd began to disperse, Jake felt the gravitational pull of his newfound self-image start to slip away. The lingering questions about the observer haunted him. What did they know? What did they see? He turned back to where he last perceived them, his heart racing like thunder in his chest. Just then he spotted the figure, standing at the edge of the fountain once more. Their presence felt ominous, a prelude to something that could either disrupt or enhance this new journey of self-discovery. And as he squinted into the distance, uncertainty wrapped itself around him like a familiar cloak. The moment had arrived for him to confront not just the fears that loomed behind him, but the shadows waiting just ahead. What did this stranger want, and how might it change his path forever? Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he locked eyes with the stranger again. The figure remained motionless, its features obscured by the brightness of the day. Yet, it was the same gaze that had pierced through the crowd, and Jake felt it boring into him as if daring him to approach. He took a tentative step forward, each movement filled with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As he closed the distance, he became acutely aware of the distractions around him, the rush of the water from the fountain, the fading applause echoing in the background, and the slight breeze that brushed against his skin. Those sensations faded into a muted backdrop as he focused on the stranger. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. The stranger smiled, a thin, enigmatic smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "You've surprised yourself today, haven't you? That was quite a show of courage." Jake narrowed his eyes, suspicion rising like bile. "Who are you?" "Someone who's seen great potential in you, Jake. You've been hiding it for too long." The stranger stepped forward, emerging from the shade. For the first time, Jake caught a glimpse of the person behind the piercing eyes. A man dressed sharply in a tailored suit, with an air of confidence that buzzed like electricity. "Who put you up to this? I didn't ask for a motivational speech." Jake's defensiveness flared even as he felt a contradictory urge to learn more. The man before him could possibly illuminate the very doubt clinging to Jake's psyche. "Not a speech, just an observation," the man replied, his tone smooth yet earnest. "You have an opportunity here to redefine more than just how others view you. You could alter the narrative of your own life." Jake's stomach knotted. He had faced fears today, but could he truly believe in a narrative worthy of admiration? "And how do you suggest I do that?" The stranger chuckled softly. "Embrace the moment. Tomorrow, you'll have a choice. Go back to the mundane existence you've become accustomed to, or challenge yourself to do more. People will ask you how you saved that woman, but what if instead they were captivated by who you can become? Discomfort can be a pathway to greatness." "Greatness?" Jake scoffed, finding an odd blend of intrigue and skepticism. "I clean up messes. How is that greatness?" "I see a man who has taken risks, who has acted in genuine moments." The stranger leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial pitch. "I also see a man afraid to keep exploring those depths. What was it you told Victoria? You want to be someone worth admiring. You're on the precipice, Jake." With those words, Jake felt the weight of choices pressing down on him, and the unease of uncertainty wrapped tighter around his throat. He had always allowed the world to define him. Why was he abruptly questioning that narrative now? He sensed the shifting tides within him, a reawakening that excited yet terrified him. Just as fear began to bubble to the surface, the stranger straightened. "Think on it tonight. Tomorrow a challenge will be waiting for you. Will you step up?" He turned away, his demeanor shimmering with purpose as he walked away, blending into the crowd like a specter. Jake stood still, the echoes of the stranger's words resonating like the toll of a bell in his mind. He had a choice and it terrified him. Tomorrow would bring a decision, a moment that could define the contours of his life. Retreat back to safety or leap into an unknown that promised personal growth. As he stood, frozen for what felt like an eternity, he silently pledged to himself that he would seek out this challenge, whatever it was. But as the day wound down and the shadows grew longer, a whisper of doubt stirred within him. What if the challenge was more than he was prepared to handle? With unresolved turmoil coursing through him, he blurted into the fading day, "What if I can't?" The lingering silence was like a challenge in itself, daring him to confront what lay ahead. Tomorrow would not just be another day. It would force a reckoning he hadn't anticipated. And deep within, he knew that the next confrontation would not just be with the world, but with himself. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow in Jake's small living room. The promise of the day weighed heavily on him, yet he found himself ruminating over the stranger's words as he sipped his coffee, its bitterness reflecting the uncertainty bubbling in his gut. He had replayed the conversation over and over, questioning the nature of his courage and the potential he held. Jake found himself standing before the mirror, scrutinizing his own reflection. Did he really possess the qualities the stranger claimed? The face staring back appeared ordinary, an average man, burdened by the grind of day-to-day existence. But beneath the surface he felt an unsettling chaos, as if a storm was brewing within him. The challenge awaited like a hidden trail off the main path, promising either danger or growth. An hour later he was dressed and out the door, heart pounding with both apprehension and a burgeoning resolve. He moved through the streets, the world around him a blur. Each person he passed seemed to swim in their own currents, while he felt like a lone kayaker caught in a tide of uncertainty. The very thought of stepping into a challenge ignited fear, but also a flicker of excitement. As he arrived at the coffee shop where he worked part-time, he felt the familiar environment wrap around him like a comforting blanket. Yet today, it felt different. He eyed the doors as if they were gates to the next chapter of his life. Jake had a decision to make, and it required more than just the mundane tasks he performed daily. The stranger's warning echoed in his mind. Complacency could no longer be his refuge. Throughout the morning, the usual routine of brewing coffee and chatting with customers felt hollow. Each interaction reminded him of the excitement he had stifled for so long. He processed orders while mentally mapping out what the challenge could be. Would it be a task at work? A confrontation he had been avoiding? Or something entirely different? A test he was yet to comprehend. As day turned to afternoon, he was handed a small stack of menus to distribute to local businesses. Normally, such a task would be mundane, almost a chore. Today, however, he saw it as a proving ground. What if I use this as an opportunity? He thought. The fluttering sensation in his stomach shifted toward determination. He approached a nearby office, reminding himself of the stranger's words. Greatness comes from stepping beyond the boundaries. Entering the office, he felt a rush of adrenaline. He approached the receptionist with a confident smile that shocked even him. When she asked if he needed assistance, Jake took a deep breath and said, "Actually, I'm here to propose a little event. How do you feel about getting everyone here to participate in a charitable drive next month?" The receptionist blinked, surprised. Jake initiated a conversation about organizing a community cleanup, channeling all his anxiety into passion for a cause he believed could unite them. As the words tumbled out, he felt liberated, increasingly aware that this was the very courage he had been seeking. After several minutes, the receptionist agreed to pitch the idea to her boss, leaving Jake to bask in a surge of adrenaline fueled by hope and newfound purpose. Just before he left, he mused internally, "What if I could inspire others the way that stranger inspired me?" Recognition flickered in his mind. He yearned not just for admiration but also to cultivate it, to build something larger than himself in a world that often felt indifferent. Satisfied, he walked back to the shop invigorated, but as he turned the corner, he hesitated. What if this wasn't enough? The initial thrill faded slightly, suggesting that teasing out his true potential would require even bolder acts. Returning to the cafe, the shadow of his previous doubt pressed against him once again, sparking a profound question within his thoughts. Was he merely scratching the surface of his courage? As he cleaned the tables, ready to plunge into the next decision, he wondered, were the depths of his talent still waiting to be uncovered? Would tomorrow bring a greater test of bravery? For a moment, Jake stood still, contemplating what daring actions he might take next, preparing his mind for the possibility of that looming challenge. Jake Thompson stepped out of his home, the crisp morning air hitting his face, invigorating yet intimidating. He felt a wave of determination wash over him despite the uncertainties that had swirled since his encounter with the stranger at the gala. Today felt different. He was no longer just a cleaner, a cog in the machine. Today, he was a man transformed, ready to conquer the remnants of self-doubt. His recent actions, the rescue, the confidence he had demonstrated, had tugged at something deep within him. If he had proved to himself that he was capable of courage when needed most, what more could he achieve in his life? The commotion of the previous night still echoed in his mind, reminding him of the potential that lay dormant within. He could feel the spark of ambition igniting into a flame. Arriving at Maplewood Manor felt surreal. Just days ago he had felt the weight of accusation hovering over him. But now the aura of the place had shifted to one of promise. As he stepped into the grand lobby, he spotted Victoria arranging flowers, her demeanor graceful yet focused. She looked up and a genuine smile broke across her face. "Hey Jake, can I just say you were incredible last night? The way you dove in to help that woman, it was heroic." Her enthusiasm rang genuine, and he could see her excitement mirrored in the eyes of other staff members. In their eyes, he was no longer just part of the background. "Thank you," he replied, feeling a warmth of pride blossom within him. It's funny how moments like that can change your perspective. "Speaking of which," Victoria began, a hint of seriousness in her tone, "I've been thinking about how we can engage the community better. Maybe plan a charity event, something that reflects the values we both cherish." Her suggestion sent a rush of excitement through him. "I'd love to help organize something like that," he responded enthusiastically. Together they brainstormed ideas that flowed seamlessly. Gone were the days of hesitant exchanges between them. Instead, they were equals now, working towards a shared vision. As they drafted plans for the charity event focused on supporting the local community, something within Jake solidified. He realized he had partaken in a true leadership role. The idea sparked further inspiration. He not only had a new purpose, but the ability to uplift others alongside him. Days passed, and Jake found himself in a whirlwind of calls, meetings, and conversations. He had embraced his role wholeheartedly, fostering connections with local businesses, schools, and community organizations, orchestrating support systems that had previously felt beyond his reach. He invoiced doubts with action, turning whispers of uncertainty into shouts of triumph. On the day of the charity event, the atmosphere felt electric as attendees from all walks of life gathered. As he stood at the entrance of Maplewood Manor, welcoming guests, Jake took a moment to absorb the scene, the joy in the air, the collective spirit of giving, and a sense of belonging that reverberated within him. Victoria approached, her face alight with pride. "Jake, this is incredible. Look at all we've accomplished." "We've done this together," he said, feeling the sense of partnership between them ignite further. "This is just the beginning." As the day unfolded, attendees engaged in arts and crafts, local bands filled the air with vibrant music, and heartfelt stories were exchanged. A profound realization hit Jake as he interacted with those who were impacted by their initiative. He wasn't just a man reclaiming a part of himself. He was a catalyst for change, a figure inspiring collective action beyond himself. At the end of the day, after the guests left, A quiet moment settled over the empty room, the echoes of laughter and conversation providing comfort. Jake and Victoria stood together, surveying the remnants of their success, both awash in a shared sense of accomplishment. "Thank you for believing in my vision," Jake said, looking at Victoria, his gratitude deep and genuine. "I finally feel like I belong. This was more than just about the event." Victoria nodded, her expression embodying the same realization. "We both have the capacity for more." Their eyes met, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Each had played a part in propelling the other to realize their potential, breaking free from the confines of previously accepted identities. Later that evening, with the moon high above the now quiet manor, Jake felt an overwhelming wave of satisfaction wash over him. He had conquered more than just societal expectations. He had crossed the boundaries of his own limitations. The transformation was tangible. Self-acceptance surged within him, clarity replaced ambiguity. He was ready to tackle whatever life threw his way, confident in his newfound identity. Not just as Jake the cleaner, but as Jake, the community leader, the empowered man armed with purpose. The potential ignited a fire that would no longer be contained. The world lay wide open in front of him, every opportunity now infused with vibrant possibility. Tomorrow beckoned, a fresh chapter filled with new challenges and rewards. With an unshakable sense of purpose, Jake breathed deeply and smiled. He was ready. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will captivate your heart and inspire your journey. Leave a like now to propel this vision forward, feeding the algorithm that brings these compelling narratives to life. You need to tell us your thoughts, comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this incredible story with at least 5 friends who need to witness this astonishing conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support our mission of personal growth and triumph.